Hey, welcome to 5 Plus for another edition of 5 Outdoors. Joined today with Trey Reid from the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission. Trey, there's a lot going on. Let's start with the today angle. This weekend, that early Specklebelly goose season opened up. Some changes that waterfowlers might want to know about this year. What do we got?
Yeah, Scott, it is we've had an early segment of our white-fronted goose or specklebelly season, as well as snow blue and Ross's geese, light geese, for a few years. But this year, the bag limit is reduced on specklebellies. It has gone from 3 to 2. That's the daily bag limit, how many you can have per day. And also the season structure is a little bit different, Scott. We're opening today and it runs through next weekend.
Okay.
It's a 9-day season. And then it closes until reopening on November 23rd, which is the opening day of our regular duck season. And then the specklebelly and snow blue and Ross goose seasons will run concurrent to duck season. So in years past, I know a lot of hunters have gotten used to this situation where when we have the splits in our 3-segment duck season, you could still go out and hunt specklebellies or snow geese during that time. But it's not like that this year. So we've got this early 9-day season with a reduced bag limit, and then the specklebelly and snow goose season will run concurrent with duck season. So it's a little bit of a change from past years.
This may be a controversial statement, and you don't have to weigh in. I'm just going to show you my own thoughts. It actually makes a lot of sense that you can't go out and shoot a whole bunch of shotguns in this habitat at geese if the whole point of a split was to give the ducks a break, right? So it makes a lot of sense to me.
I think you have hit on exactly what our commission was thinking when they decided to adopt this regulation for this year and for the next year as well, because we do regulations on a 2-year cycle these days. But no, I mean, you're exactly right, Scott. I mean, one of the things, and I know you've been to a lot of these same little kind of panel discussions that I've been to over the years. We've been at some of the same ones, and people talking about duck hunting, and there's a perception that it's not as good as it used to be, and why is that? And I think one of the common, there's a lot of factors, obviously. It's not just one thing, but one thing that we can control, in addition to our habitat, is hunting pressure, to an extent, when we set the seasons and that sort of thing. And so I think you've hit on exactly what our commission was thinking, and that's like, okay, if we're going to have these splits to let the ducks rest, do we really want waterfowl hunters? Because specklebelly goose hunting is becoming a much bigger deal in Arkansas than it used to be. And so do we want people going out and still doing a lot of shooting? And, ducks use some of these same, especially shallow agricultural fields, shallowly flooded, that habitat. And so, you may not be shooting at the ducks specifically, but there's still this disturbance out there that stirs them up and makes them, maybe not visit those areas, when it is duck season. So I think that's the rationale, and I think that's also the rationale behind the reducing the limit from 3 to 2 is, as hunters, we always there's this limit pressure, we call it. Like, well, I'm going to stay until I get my limit, so I can tell my buddies and post on Instagram, hey, I got my limit, and so if the limit's 2, well, that's 1 less than 3. So theoretically, you're getting out of the field a little quicker, not, again, creating that human disturbance, that hunting disturbance that could potentially negatively impact not ducks, but also specklebelly geese.
For some folks might not be familiar with the history, and it's not a long one, but the history of specklebelly geese in Arkansas. They've not been necessarily wintering here in the numbers that they do now for many years. And personally, I'd kind of like to keep them around, much like the folks down in Texas and Louisiana would like to have them back, right?
Well, that you nailed it right there, Scott. I mean, yeah, that for historically, Southeast Texas, Southwest Louisiana in particular were the hotbed for specklebelly goose hunting in the Mississippi Flyway and Central Flyway, I guess you could argue too. But they were to specklebelly goose hunting what Arkansas is to mallards. I mean, that's the place to go. That's where they shot more of them than anywhere else in the country in most years, much like we shoot more mallards than any other state in the country most years, pretty much every year. But yeah, so we saw some shifts in their wintering patterns, and this is borne out by like our aerial waterfowl surveys that we fly at least 3 times every winter. Scott, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, we hardly ever saw any white-fronted geese or specklebellies in our aerial waterfowl surveys. Now, I mean, we're seeing, half a million, a million birds every time we fly. We are wintering more specklebelly geese in Arkansas than anywhere else in the country. So, we first talking about the season, we mentioned that um, it is becoming more an opportunity and something, a species that hunters pursue. Well, that's the reason. There's more of them now, and they're fairly easy to hunt, unlike the snow geese where you have to put out hundreds and
Yeah,
hundreds, if not 1,000+ decoys. A couple of dozen speck decoys and a decent specklebelly goose caller, and then they're kind of a lot like mallards. They respond to the call. They work, what we call working, circling the
sure.
decoys and responding to the calls. I mean, so it's yeah, I mean, it's definitely a great opportunity, and it's something that's still relatively new for Arkansas. And again, getting back to these regulations that are slightly different this year, I think you're exactly right, Scott. I mean, it's something that's been done so we can keep this. That this can be something we can enjoy, well into the future.
If we can keep it. It's clear these birds are willing to change where they spend their winters. Let's not force them to move anywhere else. Okay, that's waterfowl. We're getting closer and closer to traditional duck hunting season, but we're also in the middle of deer season with regards to muzzleloader and some new opportunities. How's that been going so far?
Man, it's been great, Scott. I could pick on you, being the meteorologist. I know you don't control the weather, but
Some folks would like you to believe that I do. Let me show you my Facebook inbox one day.
yeah, I get it. It was a tongue in cheek. No, it's been a little warm the last few days,
Yep.
but we did have good weather that opening weekend last weekend
Yep.
for what we now call our alternative firearm season. Of course, it was muzzleloading season forever, and this year our commission, in an effort to really expand opportunity, offer maybe a different way for people to enjoy this season. Uh, we renamed it Alternative Firearm Season because this year, for the first time, in addition to traditional muzzleloaders that you have to load down the barrel,
Right.
we are allowing the use of firearms that shoot straight-walled ammunition, straight-walled cartridges, and uh, to back up a little bit, what that is, it's just what the name implies. But if you not really into firearms and shooting, you might be like, okay, so what's that? Well,
Right.
these are the brass case. There's no shoulder or no taper to it. They're the same diameter where the projectile fits into the top of the casing, and the same diameter at the bottom where the primer is. So there's no taper or shoulder. These are things like your 4570 of
Okay.
probably one of the first brass cartridges that came on the market in the late 19th century. 350 Legend is one that's immensely popular now, that a lot of manufacturers have been making. They've been flying off the shelves of our sporting goods stores since this season was announced. But so yeah, Scott, this season obviously a lot of excitement and anticipation for it, but because of this new opportunity. And man, the hunters last year, Scott, we had about 11,000 deer checked during the entire muzzleloader season, and that was down a little bit.
Okay.
But we've already, before this weekend, we had about 15,000 deer that had been checked already, and a
Really?
great bulk of those were the first 3 days of the season, last Saturday, Sunday, and Monday.
When it was
One
cool.
thing that I did find interesting, and I guess it shouldn't be because we've had our muzzleloaders, in our gun safes
Yep.
for years, but there were still more deer checked, at least coming into this weekend. There were still more deer checked with traditional muzzleloaders
Okay.
than there were with the straight wall firearms. So I thought that was pretty interesting. It was about a 45% breakdown. So it wasn't like a huge number more, but I don't know. I just kind of thought that was an interesting little factoid to share today.
I saw something similar to you. A lot of these sporting goods stores going through a lot of these new firearms. So something tells me that maybe not next year, the following, maybe that number is a little closer to 50-50, huh?
I think that's probably a safe bet, Scott. And I've had a lot of people ask, like, well, why have this expanded season? Why
Yeah.
offer these new firearms? And I think largely it's a result of, I mean, it's something that the public has asked for. I know just, you know, you were talking about your inbox. Mine is pretty well visited as well as and my phone number's on our website. And so I get, people like, hey, why don't y'all do Louisiana, Mississippi have a quote unquote primitive weapon season and not just a muzzleloader season. And so I think our commission responded to that. And then the main thing is, Scott, we've got plenty of deer in Arkansas. I mean,
Yep.
it's like,
Yep.
we don't really have to worry about over harvest. I mean, we're obviously constantly monitoring populations and
Sure.
doing various types of herd health checks and collecting data of all sorts. But we got plenty of deer, and I think the commission said, hey, if people want this new opportunity, and there's been a desire and a demand for it, let's give it to them.
Well, that's encouraging. That's the way it should work, right? As long as we can back those things up with good science and good management, like that's the way it should work. And sounds like that's
100%.
what we've got going on. Okay, so we're not too far from traditional rifle season, right? In fact, you start hunting next weekend.
Yeah, the kids get the first crack this
Okay.
this coming weekend, Scott. November 2nd and 3rd, and it's a special 2-day season just for the kids. Got to be between the ages of 6 and 15. Of course, 16 is considered an adult hunter, and you got to have a license. And we do have a bottom end there on the age. Just kids generally probably, every kid's different, but there were likely some abuses of the season when 2-year-olds
Yeah.
were checking deer before, and so
Yeah.
that was one of the reasons we went to that 6 to 15, and that's for all big game in Arkansas. So yeah, man, it's all about the kids. One thing I would remind folks, if you're going to get out there, and I'm sure most folks have already figured this out and
Sure.
gotten it. Some of it's still pretty new. We went last year to a system where even youth hunters, they don't have to have a license, but they do need a customer identification number. And you just go to our website, agfc.com, same licensing portal where you buy your license and get your deer tags and bear tags and all that
Sure.
stuff. And you just get a free customer ID number that will be your child's, almost like a social security number with game and fish for as long as they buy licenses and hunt and fish. And so the good news is you don't have to check that deer on your tag anymore. You can check it to them, and they've got their deer tags. And so it works out well for everybody.
Like,
And
good tracking.
ultimately, yeah, Scott, ultimately that's the thing. It helps the Game and Fish Commission understand our customers better, who's hunting, and what kind of effort there is.
Sure.
It gives us a little bit better, cleaner data set to work with.
So if youth start next weekend, that means the following weekend, everyone else out in the deer woods. I gotta ask you. It's been really dry. It's been really warm, and while I know the weather pattern's probably going to change around Halloween, at least that's the way it looks now. Does that play any role in hunter success, or perhaps even the strategies folks might need to take?
Yeah, I mean it definitely does, Scott. And I would say you're correct. November 9th is the opening day of modern gun deer season across the state. Uh, Probably the biggest influence it has is on hunter effort. I mean, what Wednesday and Thursday we're talking temperatures around 90 degrees, and it's like, yeah, it doesn't really make you want to go sit on a deer stand.
No.
Swatting mosquitoes and sweating, and you considerations. You've got to, if you do take an animal, you got to get it on ice or get it cool
Pretty
somewhere.
quick.
Get it skinned and gutted and all that. Really quick, and it doesn't. I guess you could say it just is not as fun of an experience to deer hunt when the temperatures in the upper 80s or low 90s. So yeah, it does have a significant impact, and we've looked at some data in the past where we overlie like, deer hunting success by day. And of course it peaks on opening day and
Sure.
it spikes on weekends and things like
Yeah.
that. But you can also like lay like, correspond that to, daily high temperatures.
Oh yeah.
There's a pretty good correlation there, and I think that reflects hunter effort. Another thing too, you mentioned, Scott, the dry conditions. And boy, that extreme portion of northwest Arkansas,
It's
those
bad.
upper kind of two rows of counties, I mean, I think it's in extreme
It
drought.
is.
Was when I last looked at the drought
It
monitor.
is.
And really the entire state, except for the northeast quadrant, is in some form of drought right
Right.
now. So it's tough out there. But sometimes that can affect our the leaves are starting to fall off the trees.
Yep.
Acorns are dropping maybe at you know earlier than they might have if things were a little more normal, a little wetter, and so that's going to affect the way deer move and the kind of food sources they use and what's available to them. So it can definitely affect hunting strategy. And here's it goes without saying, or should, but probably the biggest danger. You think, what do we all want to do when we go to deer camp? And we want to sit around the campfire and
That's right.
have that camaraderie and talk. And there are a lot of counties in the state. I believe about 2/3 of the
That's
counties
right.
are under burn ban right now. So check your conditions locally, and be careful, and let's not create a wildfire out there.
So I know at this point we have all pretty much adjusted and we've accepted and we're managing chronic wasting disease. But what do we need to know? Is there any refresher before folks maybe head out? What are you guys looking at this year in terms of that and our deer population?
Yeah, our chronic wasting disease management zone did expand a little bit this year, and it essentially has basically every year since we found it initially in 2016 in Newton County. Uh, Not a lot of significant changes. Again, there are a few more counties, and I would encourage folks to check out the Arkansas Hunting Guidebook to get the latest. And
Okay.
we've got maps in there and the different rules about what you can and can't do if you hunt in a CWD, because we have a tier 1 and tier 2 CWD management zone, and regulations are slightly different. And movement in between tier 1 and tier 2, and then movement from those to other parts of the state, that's kind of the key. The main
Sure.
thing is we don't want humans to introduce CWD to another part of the state where it is not already. But here's the key thing. The biggest thing that hunters can do is keep hunting. Deer hunters are deer managers, and they are the first line of defense in helping the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission perform our mission, which is conserving the wildlife resources of the state. Excuse me. But the other thing you can do is to get that animal tested. We have more than 100 drop-off locations around
Yep.
the state, as well as a network of taxidermists that will pull a sample from your deer. We can only drop the heads of does in these freezers because they go in a bag, and the antlers obviously poke holes in the bags.
Sure.
So if you're going to have a buck tested, and a lot of these taxidermists are testing, they'll test deer beyond just a buck that you want to have mounted. Like, you don't have to necessarily be their customer. Again, there's a list of those taxidermists in the hunting guidebook. You can also go, Scott, to hefc.com/CWD. That's kind of our landing page for all things chronic wasting disease. Get you up to speed on what it exactly is, how it infects the animals, some of the reasons we are concerned about it. But again, we need hunters to go deer hunting. And the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the Arkansas Department of Health recommend that if you hunt in an area where CWD is known to be present, that you have your animal tested before consuming that meat. And we've done a great job working with with the Department of Ag, and they've got some testing facilities down there in Little Rock now, right next door to Game and Fish, actually. So we're having about a 2-week turnaround time on
Okay.
those samples. So get your animal tested. It'll give you peace of mind, and it will also help us keep tabs on this and help us detect any new locations where CWD might be present in our state's deer herd.
few minutes ago, you mentioned Newton County. There's some fun activities happening there today, the day that this episode of 5 Outdoors airs, Saturday, October 26th. What's going on over there at the Nature Center?
Man, it is Color Fest, and it is probably our #1 visitor day today at the Ponca Nature Center. If you're unfamiliar with that facility, it is in the sprawling metropolis of Ponca, Arkansas, population about 15 or 20. But it's right there about a quarter-mile north of the Ponca access to the Buffalo National River. And I know a lot of viewers and folks that watch 5 Outdoors are familiar with our elk herd over there, but that is a fantastic place to go watch elk there in Boxley Valley. It's about 6 miles of valley there, highways 43 and 21 running south from Ponca. And those elk there's no hunting season on them there. They're somewhat habituated to the traffic that runs up and down the valley. And, folks get out, pull off the road and take pictures and get their binoculars out and just watch the elk. It's a fantastic time of year to do that. The elk breeding season is going on. You'll hear some elk bugling. I would highly recommend early morning, late evening hours. That's your best bet. But that Ponca Nature Center, it's basically a jumping off point for Buffalo River adventures and for understanding like where to go find those elk. They can tell you, hey, yesterday they were in that field, right by the Ponca access, or they were a little farther south in the valley, or they can tell you that. But Color Fest is a celebration of fall color. We've got artists that'll be there doing paintings as well as selling arts and crafts, and it's really just a celebration of our Ponca Nature Center, that elk herd, and gosh, and this wonderful fall color and time of year in Arkansas.
Trey, you said it best on our text message earlier today. You said it is just that time of the year that we have so much to talk about, and that just gets me so excited. We are really entering into the thick of it. I can feel it, despite the fact that I'm also sweating a little bit at the same time. So thanks so much for carving out some time out of your busy schedule to join us. We'll have you back on here on 5 Outdoors real soon. In the meantime, that's going to do it for Trey and myself. We'll see y'all next week.